Fatalo fatu mula faloalo fafonga le tunu ni taiao o mafatasi male sunga ya Barbara Edmonds il faipule le tu mana electorate matitata noal fo tau manga tonu panemene ia minisi fo yo fo fonga nga ye wa o yele faima so upole parti le po tulanga tau tau tupi finance ia le la matitata noal taiao neita so le opsionga faipule mana Barbara
Talofa lava and ko tēnei wiki o te reo Māori, so kia ora.
Ake.
Ake, a forever language,
yes.
You know.
No, I was doing a bit of reading last night about that too. So it was about after 1970s when they started trying to revive it.
Yeah, they had the Māori Language Commission was established from a petition that was taken to the forecourt of Parliament. So ake though, which is the theme of Forever Language, is about a war during the civil wars, New Zealand wars, and the Māori chief at the time, as they were losing their pa to the British soldiers. He cried out, you know, ka whaiwhai tonu ki a koe, ake, I will fight you forever. Yeah, so that was, you know, particularly in this year with the issues that Te Ao Māori are facing with the government. I think Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori has taken a different form this year, and I think people are very proud of it as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's true to its word because it's still continuing.
Still continuing, the struggle continues.
And it's amazing the people that took the petition to Parliament. It was a 22-year-old girl at the time.
Yeah, and then, you know, you look at Hana Maipi Rafiti, she's Clark. She's New Zealand's youngest parliamentarian at the moment. She is the MP for Waikato. The Te Pāti Māori is her party. She just won an international award for Young Politician of the Year, and she's currently in Canada receiving that. You know, I think that's the thing. It's a bit like our Pacific people. We're the young ones. We're the ones still having children, and it's going to be coming up through the generations. So things are shifting. Yeah.
No, very good. Oh, well. Let's talk about some of these things. How's the mana electorate these days?
Oh, you know, mana is such a hearty place. You know, there's a lot of things happening in our area. Our largest employer in mana is the government. So we have a lot of people who are hired by the government. And so obviously with the public service cuts, the job losses, we have, our unemployment is likely to reflect that. Our second largest sector is the construction industry, and we know how much the construction industry is basically collapsing at the moment. There are 8,000 less construction jobs in the last month in New Zealand than there was. We've got record net migration, so we've got 55,800 New Zealanders who have left the country, and so guess where they're going? Australia.
Yes.
So it is a tough time in mana. But you know, we are a hearty people. We love where we live. We love our porirua, and you know, I think during a time like this, when there's an economic downturn, our people come together and look after each other.
And you've got a very good mayor here in Porua, Anita Baker. She champions Porua.
Absolutely, Anita Baker. And, you know, in the mana electorate for me, I've actually got three mayors. I've got Anita Baker here in Porirua. I've got Janet Holbrook, who's in Kapiti. I've got Tori Whānau, who's in Wellington. So that's how big my electorate covers. Right. But, yeah, Anita is, you know, she's Porirua hard. And so she, she fights for that. She makes sure that she's the voice of the people on the ground.
O le whawhonganga le tino o leo whawhilo i tato maro whalongi e tatano foi. Ie wa amata foi tano anga wa le vai aso nei wha mamalu ele ngana a maut. Tano foi le amatanga mai o tam foi mauli la tongana. Ie leo talano anga i porua. Ai wha marurua tu le malu le atino ono le teimi uti e afo le walu le anga taile o le iwa le anga tan matanang o le la wha persani e umale interview. In the famtala to let time will afford even pay amateur nom Sabine Pokalamina.
Yeah.
Just apologize and was we're going to talk in English from now
and
on.
Then you'll translate at 9:30.
Yes.
My Samoan's still keeping up.
Good on you. Learn the Maori and learn the Samoan as well.
Yeah.
So when I hear the restriction, the contraction on the jobs, the availability of jobs, I feel for our people because most of them work in the labouring, and it's not easy. And even with some of the the cuts in government, that's all impact on the Pacific people. working income. So we'll come to that. But you know, those are the challenges. So you must be getting used to the role in the opposition now.
Yes,
this is new for you.
Yeah, I've been opposition is new, but also being the finance spokesperson is a very senior role and quite makes me very busy. So most weeks I am in Auckland or another part of the country talking to business stakeholders. So for example, on Wednesday I was in Auckland talking to some bank CEs, chief executives. I was also speaking to the chief executive of Air New Zealand. I went out to Auckland Airport and looked at their operation services, you know, looked at how they repair and maintain their planes, etc. So it is a busy time with, with the new role that I have on. It's been 6 months now, but you know, my main job in opposition is to hold the government to account for their decisions. So yesterday, some of our families would have seen GDP figures. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Productivity. It's a measure of how well the economy is producing goods and services. The amount that came out for the last quarter shows that the economy has gone backwards by negative 0.2%. We're not in a recession as such because you need to have 2 quarters of backwards figures for it to be a recession. Some economists will say technically we are because we've had 2 quarters but it hasn't netted out yet. What that means though for people on the ground is, you know, you'll see there are job losses. You'll see there are factories across the country where hundreds of people are losing their jobs every day. You'll see businesses laying off people because they can't afford to keep them. So the government says, well, that's the Reserve Bank's fault because they hiked up interest rates to bring down inflation. However, my thing that I've been saying to the government is the government also claims responsibility for bringing inflation down. You know, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance is like, you know, we brought inflation down. Well, if they're saying they bring inflation down, then they need to accept the reason why inflation has come down, and that's because of economic activity is falling. So for people, it's a really tough time for a lot of our people, particularly our Pacific people, as you said, because they are in those manual jobs. And what I need to see and what I've been asking the Minister of Finance to do is to stop making it worse. So how is the government making it worse? So housing projects, hospital builds, school rebuilds. Our construction sector has 8,000 less jobs than there were. And that's because the government has stopped all these buildings, all these, while they're trying to make decisions. That has a huge impact on the economy. So in pure economics term, if the market or what's happening in the private sector is dropping, then the government intervenes to help keep, smooth out those economic troughs, those peaks and troughs. So we're calling on the government to do more, to hurry up and make decisions so we can get that sector back up. Because as more people get employed in that sector, then they spend more money elsewhere in the economy. And then people, we start to see a bit of less trough in there.
Paper mill, and there's a company with 230 people lost their job.
Yeah, in Ruapehu, so that's Windstone Mill as well. Weegee up in Auckland. So we're seeing it right across the country. We've heard as well, some of our corporate companies are letting go of staff. I mean, it is obviously it's because there is less money in the economy. People are spending less money because for a number of reasons. But if the government, again, wants to say we're bringing down inflation, then they need to accept responsibility for the downfall too.
Labour built a employment part of the mandate for the Reserve Bank.
Yes.
To make sure not only to look at the inflation, but also make sure people are being employed.
Yeah, maximum sustainable employment.
The National came in and took that off.
Yeah, they got rid of it in the first 100 days. And the reason why we put that in is so that the Reserve Bank, as they're thinking about changing the interest, the OCR, the official cash rate, we want them to make sure that they don't do it in such a way that we have huge job losses.
Yes.
Because that's one way of bringing down inflation is basically to make it so expensive to borrow money that people don't have money to spend. So Labour had that as the second, thing that the Reserve Bank had to look at, but the National Party got rid of it.
I see the federal government and states have brought their interest rate down, so I suspect ours will come down the next.
Yeah, so the Reserve Bank in August, their August monetary policy statement, they brought the interest rate down by 0.25%. They've indicated that we won't get to the 2%, which is where they like to be for the OCR, probably not till the end of next year. But I think their words that they say, it's quite fair to say that you'll keep seeing drops in the OCR. So that's what we forecasted when Labour was in. We actually forecasted it coming faster though. So the GDP figures, which they do look at, they expected it to be at 0.5%. It's only 0.2. So my question is, well, it's 50-50 now whether they're going to drop the interest rates again. I mean, we'll see. They'll have another look at it next month. But with the United States dropping their Federal Reserve by 0.5%, that will have impact on the global economy. And for a New Zealand business, if they're invested in the States or if they trade with the United States, they're likely to see a pickup, possibly, people buying their goods. The main thing, though, is that New Zealand, with our GDP figures that came out yesterday, we have the lowest economic activity of all the countries we usually compare ourselves. 0.2%.
0.2.
Yeah, or 0.5% per capita. So that is lower than the UK, Australia, US. Our economic activity is worse than all of those other countries. So that's a concern.
Right. So if you were in government, what would you have done to prop these?
We wouldn't have stopped all that infrastructure work. A lot of that work had already started. And even, for example, the Minister of Finance cancelled the ferries in November last year. Part of that ferries cancellation was the work that was happening on the ground to stabilise seismic strengthening the piles and the infrastructure at the ports. So we wouldn't have stopped that infrastructure because it is the right time for the government to be paying for that and to be doing that work. Our housing builds, even here in Porirua East, these are the things you don't stop because it keeps people in jobs and it keeps people spending money.
Yeah, I guess you've touched on some of the policy. I was going to ask you a question. Some of the government policy or processes that you're saying it's actually impacting negatively on the economy, and some of the things.
Yeah, so some of the, obviously with the stop in the infrastructure builds, I know the infrastructure sector have written to ministers saying, take off the handbrake, please make decisions, get it moving again. Because the thing is, once those 8,000 people that have lost jobs, over 55,000 people have gone overseas. And that's the thing with the construction sector. They can move overseas where their skills are highly sought after. The other aspect is the Te Whatu Order or Health New Zealand have got a hiring freeze on doctors and nurses. We're getting cases right throughout the country of hospitals saying we can't hire nurses. That's not a good thing. We need nurses, we need doctors, we need more. There is more now, but there are people now unemployed who have just finished their courses who don't have a job. These are people that have spent the last 3 or 8 years training to be a doctor or 3 years as a nurse, who now don't have that security of being able to go work in a hospital, because usually that's where you go to if there's nowhere else in the market that you go. So those really key, those public service cuts, we see it here in Mana. We've had 7 of our major social service providers like Taimanino Trust, like Wesley Community Action, like the Porirua Whānau Centre. They've all had cuts to their funding. Now, these services deal with some of our most vulnerable families and families that need support. If you cut the money from them at a time when people are finding it hard to get by, this is when they have more clients, not less, and yet the government is cutting back the funding, so they're not able to help these people. So this is this is what happens when there's public service cuts. It's not just jobs. It's not just jobs in Wellington, which they like to say it's just, Wellington is just have less public servants. No, it's the money that filters down through government agencies to social service providers to help hire people and look after people.
It's got a ripple effect.
Yes.
When you cut salaries, like if a couple in government service both lost their jobs, the impact on the kids,
the
family, if they were sending them to expensive schools where they pay, then they probably
They got
have to
a
pull them
mortgage.
back. Yeah, mortgage.
But you know that's the other element is then it actually costs the government because these people then go on the benefit.
Correct.
So you know it's a you know
Yeah.
this is the way that things are happening, but also it's not good for social cohesion. You know, if
Correct.
people are unemployed, it means that you know people want work. You know, most people want work. There are some people that can't work because of disability and illness and other reasons, but you know these are skilled people who are you know are losing their jobs.
Yes, and it goes further because then it's less spending power, discretionary spending money, so they can't buy from a shop. So obviously the shops have to release their stuff. If you look at the hospitality sector in Wellington,
Yeah,
a
the
few of those prominent have closed.
Yeah, closings, and that's what you'll see. This is what you see because people don't have less money. So it is related to the interest rates being so high. There's less money for them, you know, because they've got because rents go up, mortgages go up. People have less money in the hand. But again, at a time like this, what the government needs to be doing is helping in relation to keeping people in work.
Now, you know the three waters that you Labour was trying to get through, and then now it's water well done or whatever the name is.
It's nothing really.
But the thing is, the rates have gone up
Yes, because of that.
across the country.
Yep, and that is it. I mean, you know, Three Waters was around getting basically taking all this water infrastructure off the council books, putting it into an entity, and then spreading the cost of fixing it over years. You know, 30, 40, 50 years. That way, people don't have huge rates. But you've seen it here in Porirua. People have 17% rate increases. Up in Kapiti, they have a 17% rate increase. Down in Wellington, they have a 21% rate increase. That's because the councils can't afford to do what they need to do for the water infrastructure. So the government got rid of Labour's Three Waters, but there's water well done now. Now we're waiting for the councils. They have 12 months to come up with a plan. But if the councils, if you've got a high debt limit and you've got a high need to fix your water infrastructure, but your council next door is really good, why would they take you on?
Sure.
Why would they do a deal with you and make it cost them more? So that's why Three Waters was mandated. So, I mean, it's really unfortunate. I feel for our local councils because they've had to increase rates because this is what's needed to be done to fix the water infrastructure. I'm sure Anita has spoken about that.
Yes.
And yet they're the ones getting blamed for the rate increases when actually really it's the government because they removed that structure to allow the councils to remove the debt off their books.
Right, thank you for that. Tax cuts. You probably got some money out of the tax cuts.
Yeah, I don't need it though. You know, I mean, I earn a good living, and in the same respect, I'd rather my tax cuts go towards keeping GP fees lower.
Yes.
You know, or go towards the public transport subsidies that we had to allow just cheaper for children to go to school. So Labour didn't support the tax cuts because we knew that the National Party was giving with one hand but taking more away from the other side. So again, those social service providers now that have less money to help vulnerable people in our community, the public transport fares, you know, now it's more expensive if you're under 25 to be able to catch the bus. You know, all those things, they all have a compounding impact. So GPs, it's now more, most GPs have basically said, the government's only given us 4% extra in funding, while the officials, the Ministry of Health said it should be at least 5%, but the government gave them 4%. And they're saying that's why we've had to put our GP fees up for you. So give with one hand but take more from the other, and that's why we didn't support it.
I really feel sorry for Margie Puleai when I see her up. When I see her behind him trying to manage this Fatuora and the changes that were introduced, and now the government's actually doing something different.
Yeah, it's a big task that Whepuriai Margie Upper has, and you know, ultimately what happens is that the government has asked them to find savings of $1.5 billion. You know, where does that come from when the health system, when it's hard to see your GP, when it's hard, where you're waiting longer for your surgery, when cancer treatments are the way that, you know, waiting for cancer treatments, and when they've got a hiring freeze on not hiring more doctors and nurses. You know, that's a difficult thing for any chief executive to be in. So, yeah, I don't envy her role at the moment.
And they sacked the board.
Yep.
They put in one person to look, and then the person's working part-time there.
Yeah, so they had when we set up Te Whatu Oro Health New Zealand, it had a board of very highly capable, well-respected people around the board to basically sort out these reforms. What they found is that because we managed to produce more nurses, which is really good, that they had a shortfall in funding to cover the nurses, basically to bring all the nurses on. They believed that they would have got the books back into order in about 3-4 months, but the government said, no, we're getting rid of you all, we're going to put in this commissioner. So the commissioner, Lester Levy, he's come in, his deputies are now getting paid quite considerably more than they used to, and now he only does it part-time. And we're saying, this is a full-time role. If you're saying it's really serious, the health system is a priority, you need to find $1.5 billion, why have you appointed someone that's only part-time? I don't get it.
It's hard to get an appointment to see a doctor.
Well, especially in the
days.
commissioner's getting paid over $300,000 to do his job. So
Part-time.
Part-time.
I see that your party leader, Chris Hipkins, is, I guess he wants to campaign the Labour Party to look at the tax system. What do you think he's transforming?
So we've both Chris and myself, because obviously as the finance spokesperson I have a lot to say in this area, but Chris is wanting New Zealand to have that conversation around whether the tax system is fair. Because if you earn the money you earn at your job, if you're a salary and wage earner, so your pay, you are taxed for every dollar that you earn.
Yes.
But if you have money through other ways, such as you sell your third or fourth house and you make a gain on it, then you're not taxed. But is that fair? And that's the question we're asking New Zealand. Is that fair? And so there's been a recent research that's come out from the Victoria University around, obviously how much the people who earn the most, how much they're getting taxed. And it is showing there is unfairness in the system. So for the Labour Party, we've accepted we lost the election. Our members, because we're a party of people, and we make our policy through the people that who've joined the Labour Party, it's been really clear that they want us to move harder on tax. And it's harder political conversation too, is because everybody says, oh, Labour's going to tax you more. People think, oh no, they're going to tax me more. And it's like, you're already getting taxed more. Wage and salary earners are holding up basically the tax take because they're getting taxed for every dollar. But people that have wealth and capital aren't. So that's not fair, and we're trying to have that conversation with New Zealanders early so that when we come to the election, they understand why we're doing what we're trying to do.
I think every time the word wealth tax comes up, everyone puts their hands up and says, no. Perhaps you should go with fair tax. Fair tax policy would be...
Fair tax policy system, And that's ultimately what we want, right? And it's like, you should get paid for a decent days of work, but if people who are very, very, very wealthy, and because they have income in other places, if they're not paying as much of a percentage of tax as you are, then I think people can make up their own minds as to what that is.
I think somewhere I saw that only New Zealand and some other country are not taxing any.
You pay less. We pay less than our peers in with other countries and 9 other countries that we would compare ourselves with.
And the thing is, it looks like historically, before 1949, we were paying some kind of wealth tax. And then the national government came in and they stopped it.
Yeah, so, and lots of countries across the world have had a wealth tax of some sort. But a lot of countries have removed that because actually a wealth tax, you can easily avoid it by the way that you structure your entities or the way you structure your income. The difference though is a capital gains tax. So people may have heard what a capital gains tax is. That's in almost every major country in the world. So these are the good things and the bad things that Labour will need to think about as we look into what we want to do with the tax system. But why I pick the wealth tax and the capital gains tax is because those are the most common ones that people know about.
Was it David Parker who was leading this? Obviously, you'd be keen to help you out with this. He's done all the work there.
Oh, he's done it as the previous Minister of Revenue. So our revenue spokesperson now is Deborah Russell. So David has been talking to people that have invited him to talk about what's called the High Wealth Individuals Project that he undertook as Minister, which showed that the top 300 families in New Zealand pay less tax than as a percentage of their income than the average salary and wage earner. So David's been talking about that. He's and some people have said it's a capital income tax, but ultimately the Labour Party needs to be clear on what we're going to do in that space and have that discussion with New Zealand before the election.
Well, we'll watch this space. We'll see where the discussion leads to and the work that you're
and I'll be
doing.
back here to explain it as well. Yeah.
Okay, Barbara, thank you. You know the time we have. Thank you, and then best wishes for the work that you're doing and as a spokesperson in finance for your party. Perhaps you might want to give a message to your constituents and our Pacific community.
It's a tough time for our families right now, but we're Pacific people, we're strong, you know, we know that by working together we can support each other. You know, I do carry a big responsibility as being the first Pacific person ever to have a finance role in any parliament, and also the first woman in the Labour Party to have this role. But I feel very grateful and thankful to both our community and my family and the village that they support me to carry this burden. So in the same way that you're carrying your burden, you know, look to your village, look to your family, and together we'll get through this really tough time.
Yeah, all the best. Ole tato polkalamin na tanoanga mali sunga ya Barbara Edmonds. Ia ole so upule tulango me tautupi. Ale pati le lipa mo se sia no to tanua. Este mo mola matano to traveling I se vai ngol interview ni. Ya no faculous polkalam fa pito e fa Sāmoa to le afule atoanga pol matano ngal tau ni. Ai fa tofa soifua.